I want to hit you with something else also. As you pointed out, the negotiations are taking place. Now, from my point of view, these negotiations have taken somewhat of a sinister turn. The first two negotiations led by Witkoff, and I can't pronounce his name, Agarchi, I believe, for the Iranians, the foreign minister for Iran. Those seem to be very positive. The way they were talked about, very positive. The third one seems to be more tense. And I pointed out to my audience in a video that I did that they've taken somewhat of a sinister turn. And what I meant by that is Rubio, in all of these negotiations, whether with Russia, whether with Iran, even when the negotiations were taking place with Israel, were sidelined. Like the State Department just wasn't part of it. And then all of a sudden, you see videos of Rubio coming out when a hard line starts to take shape. And you see Witkoff seemingly taking a back seat. Now, Witkoff was still running the negotiations, but the person who was doing the talking was Rubio. And what Rubio was saying was not what Witkoff was saying. Initially, when Witkoff went on Sean Hannity, Witkoff said something to the effect of, yeah, this is about them not getting a weapon. And this is about bringing down enrichment to 3.6%, I believe he said. Witkoff gets attacked for that. And he puts out a tweet saying, look, this is going to be a Trump deal. And they need to get rid of their nuclear centrifuges. Basically, what Netanyahu was effectively pointing out, a Libyan option. So you get now Marco Rubio coming out, giving the hard line. Well, we're okay with them having nuclear energy. And what he's not saying, though, under that is, as long as they don't have their centrifuges, meaning they got to import that from somebody else. And of course, from Iran's point of view, we're a sovereign state. Who the hell are you? Not to mention, how do we know we're going to get what we need from someone else? We want to have our centrifuges. This is a red line for us. But they went in knowing it was a red line. And now the Witkoff position has moved to what Rubio and some of the other Zionists are saying, you need to get rid of all your centrifuges. All right. So that was the third negotiation that at this point, they're at an impasse. They're bumping heads on this issue. What is your read on this? Because either one or two things is true. Either Trump really wants a deal, in which case he's going to allow some flexibility in the position, or this is a stalking horse to create a pretext by which to attack Iran. I don't know which one it is. What's your take on this?
Well, first of all, I think it's important not to assume that Trump knows what he wants. Okay, we oftentimes, the president knows he's the president. How can the president not know what he wants? Maybe he may not know what he wants. He may just be flailing around like an incompetent buffoon, which happens to be the interpretation that I think is most plausible. But putting that aside, Jamarl, let's just look at sort of, and I don't purport to be an expert in nuclear energy, but my understanding is this, okay? In naturally occurring uranium has the necessary continents for nuclear energy at the level of 0.7% on average, okay? In order to be able to operate a commercial nuclear facility, in general, you need, it depends on the type of nuclear facility that you have, enrichment to the range of 5%. And then if you want to have the ability to have research reactors, you have to enrich to the level of 20%. You want to have nuclear weapons, you have to go apparently in excess of 90%. The Obama era nuclear deal set the cap at 3.67%. Now, it's my understanding, again, I'm no expert, that given the nature of the nuclear facilities that Iran had, at that level, it could operate commercial nuclear reactors for peaceful civilian purposes. But if you take away entirely the enrichment capacity, you can't operate a commercial nuclear facility unless the enriched uranium is coming from an external source, for example, from the Russian Federation. In any event, all of this is kind of academic because what Israel is demanding, and in fact, Netanyahu reiterated this demand yesterday, is the complete dismantlement of Iran's nuclear program. He calls it the Libya option. And some of us are old enough to recall that Muammar Gaddafi agreed to surrender the nuclear program of Libya, the peaceful nuclear program of Libya, after which, of course, they overthrew his regime, destroyed the country, and sodomized the man to death. So I don't think that that's likely to inspire any confidence.
Excuse me, real quick.
Iran.
With the machete. They sodomized them with machete. Yes, I just wanted to point that out. It wasn't just sodomized. It was.
And as Hillary the Butcher said, we came, we saw, we conquered, or whatever the hell she said. This is one of the most disgraceful moments in, modern Western imperialism. It was the most prosperous state in Africa. So Netanyahu, he keeps referring to Libya. He must know that the Iranians recoil in horror when they contemplate the possibility of having the same destiny as that of Muammar Gaddafi. And I think he knows perfectly well the Iranians aren't going to accept that. He said they're not going to accept it. In fact, not only are they not going to accept the complete dismantlement of their nuclear program, their civilian nuclear program, but they've said categorically, we're not going to give up the power to enrich ourselves. The only thing I think that is on the table from the Iranian perspective is the precise level to which they can enrich. Maybe they would be prepared to accept, I'm sure they would be prepared to go back to the Obama-era nuclear deal to avoid a war. So 3.67%, which is, as I understand it, pretty close to rock bottom if you want to be able to enrich to the level to have a commercial nuclear reactor. Maybe they'll go a little lower than that. And maybe they'll prolong the deal. Apparently, Trump was really upset that Obama's deal was only 10 years long. So maybe they'll make it 15. Maybe they'll make it 20, But I think that's as far as they're willing to go. And I think what this is really about, because let's remember that the U.S. intelligence agencies in the threat assessment they just issued for 2025 said they don't believe that Iran is trying to develop a nuclear weapon at all. So there's a real question about whether this has anything to do with nukes. I think what really is going on here is that they want to get rid of Iran's hypersonic ballistic missiles, and they want Iran some kind of ironclad constraint on Iran's ability to support the resistance. And these two are non-negotiable points. So there's one or two things going to happen here. These negotiations are going to fail, or Trump is going to have to shove down the throat of Netanyahu a deal that he hates. Netanyahu wants war. He's demanding things that the Iranians will never accept because he wants the negotiations to fail. And the question here is whether Trump is going to shove a deal down Netanyahu's throat. I don't know. I'm not confident that he will. I think more likely than not, and I would love to be wrong about this, we are headed towards war with Iran. I'm sure you know this, Jamarl, and I'm sure many people in our audience know this. There are a lot of people in the U.S. government who want a war with Iran. There are people in the Pentagon. There are people in the cabinet of Donald Trump. There are people in the intelligence community who want a war with Iran. So, Netanyahu has plenty of allies in the U.S. military and intelligence communities when it comes to war with Iran. Is Donald Trump going to stand up to all these people?
I mean, he
I don't know.
hired them. He put them in his cabinet, for God's sake. I think people are policy. And I think, Donald, consider for a moment what Donald Trump is doing to free speech. He's bastardizing free speech, right? He's kicking people out the country at the behest of a foreign government, which is just outrageous. He is trying to browbeat universities into going with some kind of Zionist, re-education. Again, for a foreign country. Again, outrageous. All of these things are anti-American. And I go back to Wesley Clark with this whole thing of taking down all of these Middle Eastern governments, with the last one being Iran. And Donald Trump has put in the most rabid, whack job, batshit crazy cabinet that I have ever seen in an administration. He surrounded himself by these people. And I suspect that part of the reason he keeps sidelining them is because they're lunatics. And he knows they're lunatics. And so he sends Wickoff to these meetings as opposed to a Rubio. I know Rubio was going to go to London. He pulled back. But I'm just saying Wickoff seems to be leading these meetings. He's bringing people onto the technical teams. The guy that used to work for Bush, who was part of, what is his name? Michael Anton. I hate to be cynical about it, but I have a hard time being cynical, not being that way, considering I've seen Afghanistan go down. I've seen Iraq go down. And he's using the exact same argument to take down Iran that they use for Iraq, weapons of mass destruction, despite the fact that our own intelligence assessments are saying they're not trying to get a weapons of mass destruction. And so is he putting a deal, once again, that he knows is going to fail in order to say, well, I did everything I could. I tried. They wouldn't work with me. We were being peacemakers. And so now we have to attack Iran.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know if it's that. Oh, go for it.
I can't stress this enough. We can't assume that Donald Trump has a plan. We can't assume that Donald Trump has a clear objective. He may just be a complete incompetent buffoon who governs whimsically, and from one day to the next, his objectives, his aspirations, his plans change dramatically. That's
That's
entirely.
terrifying.
My belief is that Donald Trump is fantastically incompetent, mind-bogglingly incompetent. All these people out there who are saying the man has, he's playing 5D chess. I heard somebody say the other day he's playing 5,000D chess. He's invented a form of chess that no one has ever heard of before. That's how brilliant he is. No, he's a buffoon. That's all the evidence is telling us. He's a buffoon. And I think he's going to end up stumbling in a buffoon-like manner into a full-blown war with Iran. And you know what? I don't think ultimately he will come to the. I think there's tension growing between him and Netanyahu for all the reasons I've articulated. But I think ultimately what is going to save the Palestinian people is going to be the collapse of the Israeli regime. And we can get into that if you want. But there's so many things going on in Israel right now which are pointing towards a collapse. And the Palestinians themselves are contributing to that through their incredible courage and resistance and their steadfastness. So that's where I think ultimately the salvation for the Palestinians will come from.
Let's go into that for a moment, because I am very curious about what is taking place in Israel. I mean, I would imagine they are in a pressure cooker with this war that has lasted for almost a year and a half, if not longer. You have troops that apparently don't want to fight. You have the religious community that don't want to fight. There's that. I think it's like 40% of people didn't show up for the conflict or show up to military service. Like, it is a pressure cooker. Many of the Palestinians at this point are either dead, but cannot do the labor that they were typically doing prior. And then it's like, okay, well, if that's the case, how is the state even keeping going? Like, where's the money coming from for the state? Dig into it for us. Give us some more context on this.
Well, one thing that is of importance is that the Israeli military has announced in the last, since Thursday, 4 dead soldiers, including a platoon commander, and 7 seriously wounded. Apparently, a couple of them, female intelligence officers who were in Gaza in a Jeep that got hit with an RPG, have had leg amputations happen. Wow. There are people in the Israeli military are being killed and maimed in a war for which there is no end in sight. Even the Israeli media and intelligence community are admitting that Hamas has managed to recruit thousands upon thousands of new soldiers, and I'm sure that they've been doing whatever they can to train them and arm them. There's all kinds of unexploded munitions, immense amounts of unexploded munitions all over Gaza, which the resistance groups have learned to repurpose into deadly weaponry for their own defense of the Gaza Strip. And then you have, as I mentioned, we didn't talk about it, but this psychodrama that's going on between Ronan Bar, the now fired head of the Shin Bet, the Attorney General of Israel, who's been fired because she said the firing of the head of the Shin Bet was a conflict of interest, which it clearly was, a brazen conflict of interest. Netanyahu, who hired the man who was basically in charge of the investigations into Netanyahu. How can that not be a conflict of interest, right? I could go on and on. And you have Avigdor Lieberman, this who's a genocidal racist as much as anybody, was saying recently, apparently, that Trump is fed up with Netanyahu. He was saying this publicly. And as I mentioned, you have Yair Lapid, Ehud Olmert, another former Israeli prime minister, warning about civil war. The economic damage being done to Israel. Israel is an international,
Pariah.
I don't want to use the word pariah because apparently that has some racist connotations, but it is. Does it? I only learned this recently, but in any event, on the international stage, Israel has been utterly and thoroughly discredited. No one is going to forget in our lifetimes the monstrosities that we have seen during this period. Nobody with an ounce of conscience and a functioning brain. So I think that Israel, look, I said this at the beginning, Jamarl. I wrote an article in October 2023, said that the unsinkable aircraft carrier is sinking. And my argument was that Israel is heading to a strategic defeat. I remain absolutely convinced that that's the case. It's hard to believe it because we see Israel killing so many people with complete impunity. But we need to look at the deeper fatal weaknesses of this genocidal entity, the overall trajectory that it is on. And the trajectory that it is on is a strategic defeat, just as Ukraine is on such a trajectory, even though it's able to put up stiff resistance on various points of the contact line. Many people can now see that it's doomed. Israel too is doomed. if for no other reason than that Israel depends, as does Ukraine, for its very existence on Western support. And Western civilization is, I'm sorry to say, as a Westerner, heading towards a collapse. That's what's happening.
Dimitrii, man, you are fantastic. Thank you for this. Like I really do appreciate these conversations.
I wish I had better vibes to share with you, my brother, but unfortunately,
no. I mean, it's just honest. Like I don't believe for a moment Trump is playing 4D chess or 5D chess or whatever the hell kind of chess is it.
50,000 D chess.
There's a document called Path to Persia, and it outlines this: effectively negotiate and let Israel attack. And the U.S. says, well, our hands are clean because, we weren't the ones that did the attack. But the fact of the matter is they can't really attack without us anyway, nor would they attack without Trump's go ahead to do so. They're not going to alienate Trump in the way they alienate Biden if they do the attack. So between William Burns, between that document, yeah, I agree. I assume that at some point they're trying to set up a scenario. I think what they're missing, though, is that, be careful what you ask for, right? The guy may look like a victim and he may not be a victim. In the same way that they thought Russia was Nigeria with snow, or Russia's, a gas can masquerading as this country, NATO got their ass kicked. And, this organization that had been around for like 50 years that was gearing up for a war with the entirety of the Soviet Union lost to the beating heart of the Soviet Union by itself. And so be very careful with this notion of, well, we can just attack Iran because they're a weak link. I don't think that's the case. I just really don't. I think we're undermining or undercounting their capabilities and what they can do, not just effectively to the attack, but when they respond, oh my God, like then you have consequences. So we will see. Yeah. I think you're right, unfortunately. I think you're right. I think he's incompetent. I think that's what we're doing. My man, thank you for this. I really do appreciate it. Let me just tell the audience we're Dimitrii Lascaris, lawyer, journalist, activist from Montreal, Quebec. By the way, where can people find your work, Dimitrii?
My main gig nowadays is my YouTube channel, Reason to Resist. So it's Reason, the number 2, Resist, no spaces. And on Twitter, you can find me, X, you can find me with the handle @Dimitrii Lascaris, again, no space or dot. And that's where I spend most of my time nowadays, fulminating about the horrors that we're witnessing. So it's always a pleasure to talk to you, Jamal. It really is. You're doing fantastic work, brother. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, man. I try. I keep puttering along. You have a good one, okay? Be safe. Enjoy Greece, by the way. Beautiful place. Have a good one, man. Be safe.
See ya.
All right. We have reached that point. We've had a fantastic show.